Okay. Hi, it's Jill. I was looking at how realistic is the pulp fiction overdose scene. So first of all, you gotta understand how heroin works. So heroin has these acetyl groups that when it's injected into the bloodstream, it goes up to the brain and crosses over the blood-brain barrier, and then it cleaves off these groups and it turns into morphine. So in a normal cell, there's these inhibitory neuroreceptors which are released into the synaptic cleft and picked up by these receptors and stops the release of dopamine. But when heroin comes in, it stops the release of this inhibitory ones, and then dopamine is released and floods the system. So what we're interested in is this blue little protein here, and it's called a G protein coupled receptor. And they all sort of look like this, and there's 5 different families of them. And the one we're interested in is the mu family of the opioid receptors. So they all look like this, and they have 3 different subunits: an alpha, a beta, and a gamma. And these are all they're connected to each other. So when heroin or morphine comes in, it binds to this G protein and changes its shape so that the alpha can come in and bind to it. As soon as this happens, GDP gets kicked out and GTP comes in. When this happens, beta and gamma gets separated from the alpha subunit. The alpha goes off and does its own little thing, but we don't really care about that. So we're going to look at the beta-gamma subunit, which comes over to these voltage-gated calcium channels. And if you look at their entire structure, this is sort of what they look like. So what happens is, in a normal cell, calcium floods into the cell during depolarization. And when that happens, it causes the neuron to release its neurotransmitters into the synaptic cleft, which prevents the release of dopamine. But what happens with this beta-gamma subunit is it causes the repolarization of membrane and opens the potassium channels. So when that happens, it inhibits the calcium, and then the neurotransmitters do not get released. So in the movie, they shot her in the chest with adrenaline, which is not realistic anymore. They actually use a drug called Narcan, which acts as an antagonist, which means it will bind to this G protein, but it will just stop it there. It won't let it bind to anything else, and it won't let it do anything else. So it's sort of like competitive inhibition. And if you look at the structures of heroin, morphine, and naloxone or Narcan, you can see how similar they are.